Long before humans walked the earth, forests trembled beneath the footsteps of mastodons, muscular, tusked giants built like battering rams. These prehistoric tanks weren't just larger than life, they were tougher and stockier than even the mighty mammoths. With crushing jaws and armor-like builds, they ruled their wooded domain for millions of years. But what force could possibly bring down such unstoppable beasts? Mastodons belong to a group called Proboscidea, which also includes modern elephants and extinct mammoths. Yet mastodons were not just another set of elephants. They formed their branch, the Mammoths, separate from the Elephantidae, which covers African and Asian elephants and also includes mammoths. The best-known mastodon is the American mastodon, known scientifically as Mammoth americanum. But mastodon is sometimes used for all members of the genus Mammoth, meaning it can also refer to less famous species found in parts of North America. The name mastodon was inspired by the shape of their molars. It comes from Greek words for breast tooth, since their molars had cone-shaped projections that reminded early naturalists of nipples. These zygodont teeth stood in contrast to the flatter ridges found in mammoths. Early confusion led some people to lump mastodons in with mammoths, but a closer study revealed they diverged from the ancestors of modern elephants more than 25 million years ago. That was far earlier than mammoths parted ways from living elephants, placing mastodons in an older line that never developed the tall-crowned grinding teeth typical in mammoths. Their fossil record is found mostly in Miocene to Pleistocene layers, from Africa to North America. Eventually, they became largely restricted to North America. We often refer to them simply as mastodons, but the formal name is mammoth. This genus came from older forms like Zygolophodon, known for the same basic zygodont pattern of tooth ridges. Over the centuries, naturalists discovered mastodon remains scattered across the United States, from the East Coast to the Rocky Mountains. Teeth were so large that early colonists sometimes called them giant's teeth, or believed they belonged to biblical creatures. Thomas Jefferson famously took interest in these finds, seeing them as proof that the New World was home to massive animals that rivaled Europe's extinct megafauna. In size, an adult male mastodon often matched the modern Asian elephant in height, typically around 2.5 to 3 meters at the shoulder. Some especially big males approached or exceeded 3 meters. But they didn't just rely on height. They were built like living tanks, with a bulky body and sturdy legs. Their chest and ribs were also imposing, giving them a stocky look. In many ways, they were shorter but heavier than mammoths, with more muscle mass across the torso. One hallmark was their distinctive skull shape. Unlike mammoths or modern elephants, the mastodon cranium looked flatter from top to bottom. It lacked the tall dome we associate with woolly mammoths. The forehead did not rise quite as high, and its shape was less ballooned. Another special trait was in the teeth. Their molars had ridges arranged in pairs and formed blunt cone-like cusps, suited to shearing branches and chewing tough bark. This was a big advantage in forested environments full of twigs and leaves. The pointed cusp pattern set them apart from mammoths, whose flattened plates worked for grazing on grass. Also, while mammoths developed high-crowned molars with many ridges, mastodons stayed with fewer, more pointed ridges, preserving an older design. They had tusks growing from their upper jaw. These tusks could be enormous, curving upward in broad arcs. Some individuals' tusks reached well over 2 meters and grew thick in diameter, used for defense, competition for mates, or stripping bark from trees. Unlike mammoths, mastodons generally lacked large tusks in the lower jaw. Certain older species or relatives sometimes had small lower tusks, but Mammoth americanum typically had only vestigial or absent lower ones. Researchers sometimes find well-preserved tusks that show annual growth rings. This is like reading the tree rings that reveal each year of the mastodon's life. By analyzing them, scientists can glean information about diet, environmental stress, and sexual maturity cycles. Some tusks have signs of wear or breakage, pointing to how these animals used them in daily life, maybe prying apart thick vegetation or tussling in mating battles. Though physically shorter on average than some mammoths, mastodons were no pushovers. Many individuals had a shoulder height of around 2.8 meters or a bit more, but they weighed anywhere from 6 to 10 tons. That meant they were huge, especially if we compare them to living African bush elephants, which top out around 6 or 7 tons for a large male. The mass and thick bones gave them a commanding presence in Pleistocene woodlands. This robust design earned them the tank nickname, as they could crash through brush and dense forests without slowing down. The limbs were strong and pillar-like, with big, broad footpads. The humerus, femur, and other leg bones appear more robust than in modern elephants of similar height. Some paleontologists suggest this extra stockiness might reflect their habitat, thick forests with uneven ground. With that build, they could push aside the brush, topple smaller trees to reach high branches, or wade through shallow wetlands. Many American mastodon fossils come from marshy deposits, suggesting they often fed in swampy or forested wetland areas. Zoologists studying their skeletons see signs of heavy muscle attachments around the shoulders and back. Combine that with fairly short but dense vertebrae, and it suggests mastodons were powerful pushers or rammers if threatened. Their tusks, arching forward or curving upward, gave them a further weapon if needed. Some older accounts describe how ancient mastodons might have fought, but direct fossil evidence for specific battles is scarce. We do see certain adult males with broken tusk tips or damage to the skull that might come from violent interactions. Possibly, rival males locked tusks as they wrestled for mates or territory. Their big lung capacity and overall muscular body also point to stamina. In the Pleistocene's changing climate, resilience and sheer power would have helped them find new feeding grounds when conditions shifted. Sediment analyses reveal that wherever forest or wooded wetlands spread, mastodons usually followed. Indeed, they might have shaped the environment by knocking down trees or stirring up soils while rooting for edible plants. Their thick hide and layer of body fat likely helped them cope with winter cold in more northern latitudes. Mastodons excelled at browsing. The shape of their molars was perfect for shearing leaves, twigs, and other woody materials. We know from fossil dung and preserved gut contents that they ate coniferous branches, shrubs, fruits, and seeds. Sometimes they also sampled grasses, but it wasn't their main staple. This preference for forest or swamp habitats separated them from mammoths that often grazed on open plains. Mastodons' specialized teeth let them crush bark and handle tough bits of vegetation without wearing the teeth down too fast. While mammoths possessed tall molars with many flat ridges, mastodons stuck to their older dental blueprint, sturdy ridges shaped like pairs of cones known as zygodont teeth. The conical form allowed them to snip off branches or chunkier plant matter. That structure was an evolutionary remnant from earlier proboscidean ancestors that also browsed. Biting into branches might have required powerful jaw muscles, so we often see big jaw bones in well-preserved specimens. Thanks to the rich resources in Pleistocene woodlands, mastodons had enough to eat. In many areas, stands of spruce or pine offered year-round foliage, which they supplemented with deciduous leaves in warmer seasons. Various fruits or nuts may also have been part of their diet whenever they came across them. In Florida's sinkholes, for instance, scientists found traces of cypress and other wetland plants in mastodon remains. That suggests mastodons in the region waded through marshes, munching on swamp vegetation. Comparisons with living elephants and data from stable isotopes show that mastodons rarely roamed open grasslands. Their stable carbon isotope levels were typical of animals primarily consuming C3 plants, common in forested areas. By focusing on browse, they avoided direct competition with mammoths, which turned to more grass-based diets. This difference, known as niche partitioning, helped them coexist in some regions. Their daily routine likely involved slow foraging, using the trunk to pull down branches or strip bark. Tusks could assist in prying off bark or pushing over small trees. Like modern elephants, mastodons needed huge amounts of food each day, likely hundreds of pounds, so they spent much of their time feeding. In turn, they spread seeds and shaped the vegetation. Broken branches, trampled saplings, and churned soil were evidence of their presence. These feeding habits built an intricate link to the environment, from broad forests in the north to cypress swamps in the south. Mastodons were the heavy lifters of their woodland ecosystems, busily pruning trees and stirring up the undergrowth as they ate. North American mastodons are best known from the late Miocene through the Pleistocene, with Mammoth americanum as the typical example. Over time, they migrated across broad stretches of the continent, though not as far north or into the Arctic as some mammoths did. They preferred cool forests, likely with conifer stands, forested wetlands, or mixed woodlands. Many fossil sites confirm this preference. For example, in the Great Lakes region, countless mastodon skeletons have been recovered from bogs or older lake beds once ringed by trees. Ice Age changes in climate led to expansions and contractions of forests. Mastodons likely responded by moving with the shifting tree lines. During warmer periods, they ventured farther north as conifer forests spread, but during glacial episodes, they might have retreated southward or found patches patches of refuge where enough browse remained. They didn't handle wide-open tundra as well as mammoths did, so you see fewer mastodon remains in truly northern latitudes. Although they lived across much of what is now the United States and Canada, they were absent from extremely cold, treeless regions. We find them in states like Florida, Kentucky, and across the Midwest, but not in the far northern territories during harsh glacial times. The local climate shaped their distribution. Paleoecologists pieced together the details by analyzing fossil pollen, seeds, and plant remains associated with mastodon bones. Conifer pollen is common, especially from spruce or pine species. Often, water played a big role. They favored marshy or boggy grounds, sometimes stepping into shallow ponds for lush aquatic plants. This watery environment probably reduced the risk of water shortage in drier spells. It might also have provided them with a chance to cool off or escape biting insects in warmer months. Some researchers suspect that many prime mastodon habitats vanished as the Pleistocene ended and climates got more unpredictable, with a mix of warming and the arrival of humans in many areas. Across the continent, they sometimes lived alongside mammoths, giant ground sloths, and other Pleistocene megafauna. The richness of these communities gave them constant competition, but also plenty of resources. The presence of large carnivores like dire wolves, saber-toothed cats, or short-faced bears probably forced mastodons to remain ever alert, although an adult mastodon would be a difficult target. Like modern elephants, they shaped their surroundings significantly, influencing forest structure and distribution. This synergy between mastodons, their habitat, and other fauna formed an intricate web of life during the Ice Age woodlands of North America. Mastodon social patterns likely resembled those of modern elephants. Females and their calves formed herds under an older matriarch's guidance, traveling in search of the best feeding zones. This offered security for the young, who were more vulnerable to predators. The mother was probably the central figure in teaching calves vital survival skills: how to find decent browse in different seasons, how to navigate the terrain, and how to avoid threats. Males matured around 10 to 12 years old. Once they reached a certain threshold, they probably left or were nudged out of the herd, living alone or in small bachelor groups with other males. This is seen in modern elephants and is presumed to be an ancient pattern in proboscideans. Freed from herd constraints, these male mastodons roamed widely, searching for mates and establishing local dominance. Since their tusks were large and robust, battles for mates likely occurred, though we only have indirect fossil hints, like damaged tusks or partially healed wounds on jaws. Reproduction was presumably slow. Females might have carried calves for about 22 months, akin to the gestation of elephants. The result was usually one calf at a time. That low reproductive rate means populations grew slowly, so they couldn't rapidly bounce back from big losses. Calves nursed for a year or more, gradually shifting to browse. The mother-calf bond might have stayed strong for several years as the calf learned crucial life lessons. Fossil evidence from places like the Burning Tree Mastodon site in Ohio hints that some individuals reached 30 or 40 years old, but a few might have lived longer. As with modern elephants, older mastodons could have gained respect from younger animals. The mothers protected their offspring vigorously, forming defensive circles if danger came near. Juveniles, meanwhile, learned the routes to feeding and watering sites. For instance, in colder climates, they might have migrated seasonally to find secure, food-rich areas. In times of stress like deep winter or drought, herds might have shrunk or combined, depending on local conditions. We can also guess that a wide range of social calls existed, with low-frequency rumbles traveling through the forest. Their ears were smaller than those of African elephants, but they still had an acute hearing for communication. Overall, the herd structure combined safety, knowledge transfer, and collective decision-making. This social dynamic, refined over eons, was key to mastodon success in North American woodlands. When humans arrived in North America, mastodons became prime targets for hunting or scavenging, just like bison or mammoths. Archaeological sites with mastodon bones found near stone tools or cut marks confirm these giant browsers were part of Paleo-Indian diets, albeit less frequently than mammoths. Some scientists propose that repeated hunts played a part in population declines, especially once Pleistocene climates were also changing. A few sites, like the Kimswick site in Missouri, show strong evidence of mastodon butchering. For many centuries, Native American myths might have referenced giant, tusked beasts that once roamed the forests. Though direct references are rare, tribal stories sometimes mention huge creatures similar to elephants. When European colonists later uncovered mastodon bones in swamps or near rivers, they sparked widespread curiosity. Some early thinkers guessed they belonged to biblical giants or monstrous carnivores. Thomas Jefferson famously took an interest and promoted the idea that these animals showed the vibrant, rich, natural history of the American land. The sense of wonder only grew when major mastodon skeletons turned up. In the late 1700s and early 1800s, displays of mastodon monsters in traveling shows or museums drew big crowds. Some exhibits mislabeled them or confused them with mammoths. Others claimed they might still exist in remote forests. In time, detailed research confirmed that mastodons were extinct, distinct from mammoths, and specialized forest dwellers. This knowledge broadened the public view of prehistoric life in America. Mastodon remains also helped shape American science. Early fossil finds and debates fueled the rise of paleontology in the young United States. Politicians, scholars, and collectors vied to get skeletons for personal or institutional museums. One famous find was the Warren mastodon, discovered in New York and meticulously studied. Observers marveled at the teeth, the large tusks, and the stout limbs. Another renowned find is the Bueshing mastodon from Indiana, which lets experts measure growth rings in the tusks. As the Pleistocene came to a close, North America's climate shifted dramatically. Glaciers retreated, summers became warmer, forests changed location, and open grasslands spread in many areas. Mastodons, specialized for browsing in cooler forests, faced diminishing habitats or more patchy distributions of their preferred foods. This created a puzzle. Some mastodons adapted by moving to new forests, but many populations sank as the last major glaciations ended around 11,000 years ago. Alongside climate upheaval, the arrival of skilled human hunters across the continent likely pushed them further. Large mammals across the Americas, from giant ground sloths to saber-toothed cats, vanished in a wave of late Pleistocene extinctions. Mastodons did not disappear all at once, though. Fossils in certain areas show they might have held on in small pockets for a bit longer. However, by about 10,500 years ago, they were effectively gone. Some remains date even later, which suggests a few outliers might have survived. But eventually, the combination of climate change, habitat loss, and hunting pressure spelled doom. In modern times, they became some of the first American fossils studied with real scientific care. Mastodons ignited debates. Why did they vanish? Were humans to blame, or was it mostly climate? Researchers continue to refine the timeline, discovering exact radiocarbon dates to confirm how quickly they died out. One thing is sure, their extinction reshaped the ecosystems. No other large browsers stepped in to fill their niche. Forest structures changed without big animals to knock down trees or break up thick vegetation. This might have had ripple effects on the distribution of various plant species. Mastodons truly were the bulky brawlers of prehistoric North American browsers that feasted on leaves and strode through marshy forests. Their zygodont teeth, robust frames, and sweeping tusks made them perfect for wooded habitats. Though overshadowed by mammoths in popular memory, mastodons were a success story for millions of years before environmental shifts and human hunters took their toll. If you enjoyed this documentary, then make sure to watch our next one on screen.